Well, the UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini joins me now. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Israel has banned him from entering Gaza since March of 2024. But there are agencies, of course, on the ground. The UN just said yesterday 61 attacks on schools have been reported since mid-March of this year. And we know schools often serve as shelter for displaced Palestinians. What do you understand to be going on the ground, and what do you understand to be Israel's policy when it comes to places that may be sheltering people being targeted?
Thank you for having me. It is true that the military operations are going on unabated, that every day we have tens of people being killed. The testimony we just hear is just unbearable. And when I ask my colleague in Gaza, how do you describe Gaza right now? I mean, it goes beyond imagination. Basically, they are describing a kind of a post-apocalyptic environment where the day-to-day occupation of the people is just to find ways to survive the bombardment, to survive hunger, to survive the disease. And what we have seen also over the last few weeks is that military evacuation, military order go also unabated, and we observe a trend of a population being in northern Gaza being asked to be pushed south of the Gaza Strip.
The work that your agency has done to date, at least until the access has been denied by Israelis and funding issues have been critical to the success of any of the work that you do. The work that you were doing was fundamentally to support Palestinian refugees. You have been accused as an agency of allowing significant influence in the policies and practices of your UN agency by Hamas and other organizations on the ground. Is that true, sir?
Listen, as a UN organization, we fully abide on UN principle. There have been during this war number of allegations, which we are each time taking very seriously. But unfortunately, part of this allegation are also part of a broader propaganda narrative, which prevent, in fact, the agency to really take action. And here, Becky, I think it's very important that we keep calling for international journalists to have access to Gaza, because as long this won't be the case, we will hear an Israeli narrative, but we will also hear a narrative coming from Gaza, which unfortunately is too frequently being questioned.
Yep, and I've called for access. My colleagues have called for access. Western journalists and journalists from around the world have called on Israel to allow that access. Of course, we fundamentally support the work that's being done on the ground by those in Gaza, and clearly their work supports our coverage of this continued conflict. I do just want to ask you a follow-up question on the accusations that have been made against your agency, because I just think it's important to hear from you very specifically on the accusations that are made that the terrorist groups on the ground frequently make demands of your organization and influence its decisions. Is that true?
This is untrue. Since the beginning of the war in Gaza in October 2023, the dismantling of the agency has become an objective of this war. The accusation of the infiltration from Hamas are dealt with whenever there is substance behind an accusation, and the agency has undertaken a number of investigations. But the real motivation behind this, Becky, is that there is a political objective to dismantle the agency, because through this there is a hope that the Palestinians will be stripped from the refugee status, and hence would put an end from what many Israelis say, the perpetuation of the refugee status of the Palestinians.
I know that you are as eager as anybody to get a solution to this conflict. And you have tweeted, "Hope and anticipation for a ceasefire deal. It is so desperately needed and long overdue." It seems like every time we hear talk of a potential ceasefire, the devastation grows on the ground. Two questions to you. How confident are you that we are on the brink, potentially on the brink of a deal? Can that lead to a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire? And let me just and what can be done as this deal and permanent ceasefire is negotiated, if that is what's going to happen? What can be done to prevent the death and destruction on the ground at this point?
Yes, the ceasefire is desperately needed. I believe from what we hear through the media that we have never ever been so close of the renewal of the ceasefire. What is needed once the ceasefire is being in place is the release of the hostages, but it's also the return to scaled up, safe and principled humanitarian assistance to reverse the trend of the starvation in the Gaza Strip. But to make it lasting, we need also to politically invest in the future security arrangement and governance of the Gaza Strip. We, as an agency, UNRWA, being primarily a human development organization, we stand ready to scale up from day one our primary health, but also education. I think education will be a top priority. We have 600,000 girls and boys currently living in the rubble and who have absolutely no other future than the trauma of the last 20 months.
Philippe Lazzarini, thank you for joining us. We have been reporting that there is, much momentum at present for a deal, and we will continue to monitor that, talking to our sources around the region who are involved in any way in mediating this, talking to our sources in Washington and of course in Israel as well. It's good to have you on the show. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.